Falk podcast. My name is Falk, and today we'll be joined by James Richards from the D3D4 football podcast to assess the new season in League One, which begins on Saturday. But first and foremost, James, how are you doing, mate? Are you all right?
Yeah, not too bad. Yeah, it's nice, albeit via streaming, to have football back. Let's just hope that we have a season better than last year in terms of one that is completed and avoids all the sort of controversies that we had to start it. I mean, I think one thing that I've said on all our podcasts is that I hope all fans kind of don't allow the current situation that we're seeing with Wigan, with Charlton, that we saw with Bury, to become the new normal.
Yeah.
We as fans, we're all our clubs are just one bad owner away from a similar fate. So we need to put pressure on the powers that be running the game, whether it be the EFL, the FA, to get their acting gear. Have independent bodies that do the correct checks on the owners that are potentially going to be taking over the football clubs that we love. Maybe having football clubs put in as community assets under a special, like a special law that you see charity status given, and also. I know it's currently very legal to do so, to sell your own stadium to another company owned by the same owner as your football club for getting around financial fair play and all this sort of stuff. But I don't think a football club should ever be allowed to be removed from its stadium unless there is a new stadium being built and the selling of the old one is part of the refinancing to do that. I think that's the only situation where I think you should see that happen. So a lot of things in football at the moment that I think all fans should be quite concerned about, but also be quite vocal about.
Yeah.
As a united body, I know fans have rivalries and stuff, but we have to unite on this because it's all our clubs that are going to be potentially at huge risk.
Yeah, no, absolutely, 100%. I think because of the situation with COVID, I wouldn't say it's forgotten, but like the start of the season was chaotic. I mean, countdowns on Sky Sports for like whether Bolton and Bury were going to go out of business, and the fact that it got there, it kind of shocked you that it happened with Bury. And now we look at this season, and you've got, like you said, Wigan and Charlton. We're going to assess them today, but can we really assess them? I mean, you're doing a League One 2 seasons in a row, and you've got 4 teams there where you can't really assess what they're going to be like on the field because you're worried if they're going to actually exist. I echo everything that you've just said, mate, 100%.
Well, we all want football to be decided by what takes place on the grass, not what happens in courtrooms. And I think it ruins the integrity of the sport. We had the situation last season where obviously Bury were kicked out, and then Bolton played kids for the first few games, which means that whoever played them in those first few games were, apart from Coventry, who will feel, and we'll remind them about it, were unlucky not to beat them. But I mean, everybody else had to play a sort of much stronger side. So it really does question integrity of sport, etc. It's not what we want to see.
No, not at all. And hopefully we don't. And hopefully it gets sorted out for the clubs like Wigan and Charlton very much. So what we're going to do is we kind of talked about off air, is we're going to go through each club individually, give a bit of an assessment on where we think they'll finish their summer business so far, because obviously the window's open until October. But we're going alphabetical order. So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but we come to Accrington first. What do you assess of Accrington over the summer and last season, and where do you think they'll finish?
It's been a quiet summer for Accrington, and I think that's always a good thing. I mean, I know they lost Jordan Clark, and I don't think we can understate how important he was to their team. A really good player, probably certainly in some of the stats, the best player in League One last season. He's got his move to Luton. I think he'll do fantastically well there. But this is a John Coleman side, and we know what we'll get with them, which is good signings, solid recruitment of players that probably most people haven't heard of. He'll get loans in. He'll get players from non-league. Colby Bishop last season was a huge success story, and they needed him because, of course, they sadly lost Billy Key, whose mental health issues meant that he had to retire from professional football. And so Colby Bishop came in and stepped up really well. And John Coleman gets them playing a good style of football. They're a really well-run club, and this is the kind of model that we want to see. Their chairman, Andy Holt, is very active on social media. I'm sure Sunderland fans will know all about him. Whether or not you agree with everything he says, he has the best intentions for football at his heart. And I think, listening to what he says and enacting some of his ideas would go a long way to protecting the game. Obviously, the salary cap will play into the hands of clubs like Accrington rather than Sunderland. But I think looking at the way clubs were going, it was needed. But anyway, back to football. I mean, they're a great team. They're a really well run side. Callum Johnson is a star at the sort of right back who I think will increase his talent and his value to them this year. Probably will end up being sold. They've signed a few unknown loan players from my eyes. I mean, Matt Butcher, Tom Allen, and Ryan Cassidy come from Watford, Bournemouth, and Newcastle, respectively. Again, these are, and obviously Mo Sangare as well from Newcastle. So these are decent loan signings that I'm sure John Conwell knows will be able to give him something. And he'll probably, I think clubs like sending their players to Accrington because they can develop them and increase their value, as we've seen. But it's Cameron Burgess is a good centre-back. Whether or not he's good enough for League One, I don't know. But we know what we're getting here. And I think Accrington will have a fairly stable season, should stay up again. They won't pull up any trees because, they are what they are as a club. And it's amazing that they've got to this level. But, I think I find it hard to dislike anything they do, to be honest.
I feel the same with Accrington. I mean, I tipped them actually to go down last year. And, I looked at what I was thinking, will Accrington be down or not? And I'm looking at like sort of 20th, 19th, but they always punch above their weight and survive. Like you say, the recruitment's great. Colby Bishop was one. I think he got his first goal against Sunderland in the Carabao Cup, I think it was last year. And you could just see, I think he signed from Leamington Spa. You could just see, instantly he was someone that was just going to fit into A, their style of play, and B, was going to score goals. And I don't think you can underestimate how much losing someone like Billy Key to a club like Accrington is as a player. I mean, obviously we understand why he has, and fair play and good luck to him. But I think Colby Bishop stepped up really well because he's still a young boy, so there's still more to come from him. And obviously you've got Ross Sykes at the back as well. I think Ross Sykes is a great player. I think, again, I don't think they'll pull up any trees, but yeah, I'm with you. I think they'll stay up, say 18th, 19th, but I won't put a position on it because I always get that wrong. But the next team we've got that we come to is Blackpool, who I think will be a very interesting side this season. What do you think?
Yeah, Neil Critchley has had his first full summer. He's a coach that comes with a hugely enhanced reputation for his time at Liverpool at youth levels. He plays football the right way, and I think that will be something appealing to Blackpool fans after having to put up with, I suppose is the way I put it, Simon Grayson. I'm sure Sunderland fans will remember him not so fondly for his time at the stadium, if you like. But the recruitment's been quite interesting. I mean, he's gone and looked at the kind of technically good players that played in the division below. Keshi Anderson, part of the Swindon promotion team, as was Jerry Yates last season. CJ Hamilton, obviously, from Mansfield. And the one that I really like and who I watched play tons of football last season down at Crawley was Bez Labala, who is kind of he's not really a striker, but he's more of an inside forward. Comes in off the left hand side, scored their famous goal against Norwich, which got them through into that in that cup run where they dismantled. I think, and were good for the win against Norwich actually, and they beat Stoke on penalties as well. So they had a good season with him. So I really am looking forward to seeing how he does. A few question marks maybe over whether they are too top heavy. They did sign Marvin Epiteta from Leyton Orient. He's a young defender with some promise, but is he going to be enough to guard them defensively? I'm not so sure, but I would put this side very seriously in the playoff hunt. I mean, the fact they let Ryan Hardy go to Plymouth is a testament to what they feel they can do going forward. Lost Nangele, of course.
Big loss, yeah.
Yeah, big loss. I mean, I think he ended up going abroad, actually.
He did. Right. Turkey, I think. He's gone to the second division in Turkey. I could be wrong with that, but I'm sure that's where he went in the end.
Yeah, I think so. I did. I sort of saw that, and I thought that was a strange one because I'm sure he could have got a championship club actually in this country if his agent had been any good. But each to their own. And yeah, so I expect them to set up with a really sort of attacking, entertaining style of play. And it's a little bit of an unknown because they've done such a lot of recruitment. I think when you have this much churn, it's always difficult to know how a club will settle. But they've looked good in pre-season. Ethan Robson, of course, Sunderland cast off going there, and I think he did quite well at Grimsby. So it'd be good to see how he does in League One with a team who are a bit more technically advanced than the Mariners. And I'm looking forward to Blackpool this season. Like I said, I think they'll finish around the playoff places.
Yeah, and I think, with Blackpool, I think the same as well. I wouldn't be surprised if they jumped into like 5th or 6th, because I think because of everything that's happened with Blackpool surrounding their owners previously last season, the fact that that's now changed, it feels like, and I think it's important to have a good feel around the club a lot of the time. And it definitely feels from the Blackpool fans I've seen on Twitter and the Blackpool fans I know that there is something there that it just feels a bit more positive. People obviously can't go to the games at the moment, but there's a lot more people interested because they back the regime or they like the regime. And I think Ethan Robson's, if he can perform the level, if he can stay injury free and he can perform the level he has done when we've seen him on the pitch for Sunderland, I think it'd be a great signing. And I think obviously with Critchley coming from Liverpool, you've got a style of play that he'll implement there, which if it works, they're going to be one of the most attractive sides to watch, and they weren't a bad side in the first place. Obviously, they didn't do too well under Grayson. I think he went in about December, January time. But if you look at Critchley come there, and they did all right last season towards the back end. Not perfect, but not bad. They've recruited not so bad. Like, yeah, I know what you're saying. There's a few players that have come from other clubs and things like that. But I would be surprised if they went in and around the playoffs. I'm with you on that, absolutely 100%. The next team we've got is probably, our first opponent, Sunderland's first opponent on Saturday, Bristol Rovers. They've lost probably their best player, but I was speaking to a Bristol Rovers fan, and he was disappointed Johnson Clark-Harris is gone, but he said with the way that Ben Garner is playing, he didn't really fit into it. But what do you think of Bristol Rovers losing Clark-Harris?
I'm surprised it took that long, actually. I was expecting him to go far sooner than he did. The fact he's gone to a League One rival might rankle a little bit with Bristol Rovers fans. But, they'll probably get a good fee, and I would imagine there'll be some sort of sell-on clause or bonus, rather, that if Peterborough go up, as a lot of people expect them to do, then there'll be more money coming to the Bristol Rovers coffers, which is good. To be honest, the squad is good. It's a good enough squad for League One, easily. There's question marks over Ben Garner. That's the problem here.
Yeah.
Is he good enough to lead this team? Is he strong enough as a character to lead this team? Because it's an interesting transition going from the likes of Darryl Clark and Graham Coughlin, who are very big personalities, quite demanding, to a more softly spoken and perhaps technically demanding coach like Ben Garner. And I'm not sure it always works. It's hard to judge him, though, on last season. He had that period of time away for personal reasons, and I thought the club were very good to give him that.
Yeah.
Given how ruthless football can be, that was a good move from their part. So, credit where credit's due. In terms of the transfer business, Jack Baldwin, you'll know quite well. He's come in. Centre-back Max Irma is going to be their captain. Obviously, did really well for Gillingham last season.
Yeah.
Zane Westbrook's the sort of the standout one in terms of a technically gifted midfielder, good young player. Will they get enough goals? Yeah, that's the hard thing to sort of equate at the moment. So time will tell, I think, with Bristol Rovers. I'm not completely sold on them. But, they're one of these teams that could finish anywhere, you feel, from sort of 10th down to maybe 20th. I mean, it's very hard to place them.
Quite easily. I think with Bristol Rovers as well, the first thing you see is goals. Obviously, previously you'd see Johnson Clark-Harris and you'd be like, well, there's, one of the best strikers in the league, if not the best. But then you look at who they've got now, and there's not much, if we're honest. But then you look at who they've brought in, like I said before, Jack Baldwin. Baldwin was, for me, not a bad player. I think he was a bit harshly treated. He had a bad game against Coventry, and that was it. He was gone forevermore. But there was times when he didn't do what he didn't perform in front of a big crowd. Expectations seemed to big games like Portsmouth, Coventry, he just seemed to wilt. But all in all, he actually wasn't too bad, and he's quite a good ball-playing defender. They brought in Martinez as well, the young boy from West Brom, but they've also brought in Sam Nicholson from Colorado, who used to be at Hearts. Now, he's approaching, I think, 25. He was a good young player when he was at Hearts, but does he bring the same goal threat that, a centre-forward that scored the best part of 15, 20 goals this season? No. So, again, if they bring a centre-forward in, like I said, there is a good team there. I think if they bring someone in alongside what they've got currently, they should be fine, because as a team that, they're all right. But obviously losing someone like that, in my opinion, is a big loss. But Bristol Rovers fans will probably be able to tell me how big of a loss that is and where they think they can go moving forward. The next team is one that's lost a long-term manager. brought in someone obviously vastly inexperienced. Burton, Jake Buxton's obviously taken over. It seems they're in a period of transition, for want of a better word, but I'm a bit worried for Burton. What do you think?
It all depends, doesn't it, on how Jake Buxton does? Because, we've seen managers have really good first season. I think there's a lot of question marks around Russell Martin at MK Dons last season, who was in a similar position, stepping up from a coaching role at the club and indeed a playing role at the club to become their manager, and he did really well. So it could go either way. In terms of the technicality of the squad, I mean, Michael Boswick's a great defender to have signed, vastly experienced, just what you need. Neil Erdley, you'll know exactly what you're getting with him. Great set piece deliveries. Luke Varney was excellent for Cheltenham last year. I mean, he had a bit of a knee operation just to sort out a bit of cartilage issue. I mean, but he should be fit enough to make a big impact and at least give his experience to some of the younger players there. Charles Vernham's an interesting signing. He didn't, he came from Derby, went to Grimsby, was sort of in and out the side. I think he actually went on loan to Chorley, where he did really well, and then comes back to Grimsby and continues that form. And then leaves after, I think they offered him a new contract, and he scored that sensational goal against Colchester, albeit Colchester fans will bemoan the defending on it. But, he's a good technical player. Stephen Lawless has come in. So they've got a squad there that should be able to achieve top half. I'd be very surprised to see them do any more than that. But you always have question marks, don't you, over a new manager. So an interesting transitional period for the club.
The only thing I'd say with Burton is they brought in Stephen Lawless and also Ken Hemmings as well from Dundee. But Lawless came from Livingston. Now, Lawless is 29, so he's at a good age, but he had a great season last season with Livingston. And I think people are quite surprised that he went to a club like Burton, because the way they are at the moment, and no disrespect to Burton, but the way they are at the moment, it didn't seem like a progressive move, because Livingston obviously a well-run club in Scotland, and I think there's a few clubs that were looking at him. So I'm surprised he's went there. But sometimes, when a player is on form, he can lift the whole club. So potentially, even with a new manager, Lawless is a good signing. Ken Hemmings is good. He used to be at Rangers when he was younger. I think he played a few times.
Oxford as well.
Yes, he was at Oxford very much so. No, you are right, actually. And he's got potential there. I mean, if he went there and scored only 5 goals, it wouldn't surprise me. But if he scored 15, it wouldn't either. He's one of those strikers. The next one's probably the biggest talking point so far is Charlton. Obviously, they've beat my side twice in the playoffs, so not my favourite club in the world, but I hate what's happening to them at the moment. But do you think if everything's okay, they can have a promotion push and go straight back up?
Potentially. Because they've got, aren't they? They've got a good, apart from defence, where they are very short, I think Adam Matthews will come back now. Tom Lockie's gone to Luton, but they have got a very good squad of players. Macaulay Bonne obviously scored loads of goals for Leyton Orient, and he's still there as a striker option. They've got some. Alex Gilbey, how they signed him, he was easily the best player for MK Dons last season, and he's a Rolls Royce in midfield. So great signing, really good. And they actually paid a fee for him, which is interesting given the financial uncertainty surrounding the club. Connor Washington is a solid addition as well. Not everyone is keen on him, I suppose, but I think he's a good player to have at this level. And the biggest character and the biggest and most important man at that club is Lee Bowyer. As long as you keep Lee Bowyer, you've always got a chance, because he's an excellent man manager. He has the fans backing 100%, and the players like playing for him. So, and Charlton will always bring through some really good young players. Albie Morgan's a name I'd mentioned, who I was very impressed with a couple of seasons ago when they were in League One, and he should, given the situation at the club, be given a lot more time to play. They've got Lapsley as well. They've got some good young players. So if they can get a deal sorted, get a takeover done, and maybe defensively strengthen, then I think Charlton should be. We'd have them probably have them as a top 6 side if it wasn't for all the uncertainty off the field.
So Charlton, I think they're going to survive. I know they've lost Lyle Taylor before they got relegated, but they're going to survive that because of Macaulay Bonne. But you touched on before about them strengthening at the back. They lost Tom Lockyer, haven't they? And also Naby Sarr's gone as well.
And Pearce is injured as well. So I think they've only got 2. If Adam Matthews comes back, that's 3. But they're very short. They've got Pennington and Oshalaja. So they need to strengthen there, to be honest.
I think they will. Obviously there's so much stuff to sort out. But I remember, obviously we played them first game of the season when we came down from League One, and came down from the Championship. Sorry, but with Charlton, I remember thinking, they signed no one, they're going to struggle. And all of a sudden, they signed a few players and they were absolutely fine and went up. I think you touched on Lee Boyer before, if there's one player you want, or one manager you want, to sort of unite the side and have almost like a siege mentality, it's probably Lee Boyer at this level, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's just he's synonymous with the club and has the fans support 100%. So, and the fact he hasn't left already is a testament to his loyalty, to be fair.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely agree with you on that 100%. Another interesting one, a club I'm actually really looking forward to seeing, not least because I've played Football Manager with them far too much, but Crewe. I think they're going to be all right, aren't they?
Yeah, they'll be fine at this level. And I think, importantly, they've picked up 3 signed. The last, they've signed Ofrandi Zantala. We know he's a good player from his time at Accrington.
Yep.
Mikael Mandron comes in to give much needed support for Chris Porter up front. But the place where you sort of looked and thought, well, they've lost Paul Green in midfield. Where's their experience? They've got Luke Murphy back at the club, so he was an academy player. Obviously, went off to have a better career elsewhere. Now he's back, so that's a really good signing. But Dervon Daniels and Omar Beckles, 2 top signings for this, and I think honestly they're game changers for the club because that's their weakest area. They needed some physicality. No disrespect to Luke Offord or Michael Nottingham or any of the guys that are playing centre back from last season. I think they did really well considering Eddie Nolan got injured. But now they've got some depth, some choice, and some strength. And, when they played Northampton, their lack of physicality really was a weakness. I think they've improved in that area. And I wouldn't be surprised to see them pushing at the right end of the table because as a technical side, they easily beat Bolton in a pre-season friendly. And I know you shouldn't read too much into that, but, we know that they're a technically gifted team. Tom Lowry, brilliant player. Ryan Wintle, excellent. Harry Pickering. They've kept the side together. And I wouldn't be surprised to see them at the right end of the table again.
Yeah, I think, as you said before, a really good technical side. When you look at like the players they've got, Harry Pickering, I've always been impressed with. Great delivery as well. Kirk as well, Ryan Wintle also there. But I think the players they've added to it are just going to enhance them. You're absolutely right. I think Mandron last season, I was actually quite surprised left Gillingham because the last game I was at before lockdown, Sunderland game anyway, Mandron scored twice and caused us so many problems with Gillingham because obviously he was at Sunderland and he didn't really do much here, but it was a different club and we were in a very different league. But he looks really well suited to this league and he's really physical, so he'll give a bit of hand up top as well. But they've got a good manager as well, haven't they, in Dave Artell? He's really well liked, really highly rated.
Yeah, he's an intelligent guy. I've met him and I've interviewed him, and he's very engaging, very honest, and he's good with his young players. So yeah, it's a great club. And a sort of a model for others to follow.
Do you think that it's too ambitious to think they could be pushing for playoffs?
I don't think it's too ambitious. I think, you've got to be optimistic of your Crewe. I think given the way that they played in League Two and given that 2 seasons ago we saw Barnsley and Luton. Luton, the example, they bossed League Two, playing great football. Crewe did that last year, so why not? Why can't they go on and have a great season at this level? They're a very united side. They know how they play and they've got a core group who've been together for many, many years. So, yeah, I absolutely think they could do that and they really should be aiming to go as high as they can.
Yeah, absolutely. Another club that seems to be always there or thereabouts and have a great manager, in my opinion, and Darren Moore is Doncaster Rovers. But they haven't really... They've added a few, but nothing that stands out to me. So I'm a bit concerned, but at the same time, I know they have such a good manager and a relatively decent team anyway. But do you think Doncaster Rovers can put themselves back into playoff contention this year?
I'd be surprised if they didn't. I think Ed Williams is an understated signing from Kidderminster. A lot of people liked him. So I'd say keep an eye on him. Cameron John coming back on a permanent deal from Wolves is a superb addition. And they still have James Coppinger. They still have Ben Whiteman. whether they'll get enough goals, will they? Won't they? I mean, I think in Okenabiri, Fajiri Okenabiri, who they signed obviously from Shrewsbury, who played non-league with Dagenham. I mean, he's a great finisher. So give him enough chances to score, and they'll have a striker that can probably. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if he got 20 goals this season if they give him the space. So I'm keen on this team. I know they lost Kieran Sadlier, but they lost John Marquis the season before. They will be there or thereabouts. I mean, they're a good team. One who should certainly be looking in and around the playoff places, with given the squad that they've got.
Obviously, Whiteman as well. I think at this level as well, even if you do lose players like Sadlier, having a good recruitment, which they always seem to have done. They've always brought in decent players. I mean, Sadlier was obviously brought over from Cork, I think it was, originally. So I think Darren Moore is a great manager as well. I honestly think, I've said I think they'll finish about 7th, but again, it's another club that if they get into the playoffs, you're not going to be surprised because they recovered quite well from losing like Marquis last season. I know they dropped, but I think they finished 8th or 9th, and I think people expected them to drop a lot further than that, didn't they?
Yeah, they had a good season. I mean, the fact that they've got James Coppinger still being brilliant at the age of, I think he's 39, maybe. So great player.
Yeah, and he does it every year as well. He's one of the most consistent. I think it's 14, 15 years he's been at Donny now, and he's never really not had a good season. I think it was only, 2 seasons ago where he was like top of the assist league with about 19 assists at the age of 37. So, yeah, I don't think we can count Doncaster at all. The next club that comes up is a club that I absolutely love to hate, but yeah, I suppose that's a compliment. Fleetwood, I think they could do it this year.
Yeah, I mean, as long as they don't have the sort of self-destruct episodes that they saw in the playoff first leg against Wycombe, where they just lack discipline. Their goalkeeper, Alex Cairns, had a nightmare. I mean, he's a good keeper, don't get me wrong. He just had a nightmare. But yes, I mean, they're a stable side. I think it'd be interesting to see how they cope with the salary cap at the end of the current sort of when the current crop of players' contracts run down. That's when they could have a few problems, because I think they've got quite a few who will be on substantial money, looking at the amount of losses that they've accrued recently. But I mean, whether you like or loathe him, Joe Barton has proven himself to be an adequate manager, if not a very good one at this level over the last couple of years. Jordan Rossiter joining from Rangers is great. Callum Camps is a technically gifted player from Rochdale. Joel Coleman is a good goalkeeper. So they do have strength in depth. Defensively, Harry Suter gone. Can they replace him? I think they probably need to. But they do have a good side, a good squad of players, and they have people who will score them goals in Ched Evans and Paddy Madden. So I would be surprised if they weren't in and around those playoff places again. Again, difficult to know which Fleetwood will turn up, but stability, I think, in these uncertain times will put them in good stead.
Yeah, I think the big thing with him as well is that they've got Paddy Madden, who's like a goal machine and has been for seasons on end, and obviously Ched Evans knows where the net is as well. But I think Callum Camps is actually a really good signing. He had a couple of quiet years at Rochdale. I'm pretty sure he had an injury at some point, but he had a really good season last season, didn't he? Especially at the start, he looked really dangerous at the start. I think he equalled his goal tally from the season previous within about 5 games.
Yeah, no, he's a technical player, and I think they would have kept him if it wasn't for COVID. I mean, they didn't offer any of their out of contract players new deals, and I think that's a sign of how tough the environment is for some of these teams at the moment.
Yeah. Next club that comes up is Gillingham, who I think I'm really intrigued by Gillingham, because for some reason I just thought they'd disappear last year. I thought they've lost way too many players. They've lost their goalkeeper. They've lost their centre forward. This year they've lost, obviously, Max Amer, who's their captain. But they seem to have something about them, Gillingham, since Evans has gone there, which I don't know if it's a popular thing to say, and they've signed really well. Jordan Graham, Dempsey, Robbie McKenzie. I wouldn't be surprised if they add a striker to their team if they can actually push for the playoffs, but I think they need a striker to push for the playoffs. What do you think?
I'd probably, to be honest, I disagree slightly about this needing a striker. I think if you've got John Akinde and Verdane Oliver, with the likes of Carl Dempsey in midfield supporting and Jordan Graham, Brandon Hanlon's a good player already there. I mean, I think they're equipped enough to challenge for the playoffs as long as their defence can gel quickly, because there's a young defence this year. Conor Ogilvie is is a very important player for them now, because I think if you've got Zach Medley coming in from Arsenal, technically he looks very good, comes out with the ball well, and they've got their other youngster whose name's escaping me at the moment, centre back who was good last season.
Jack Tucker.
Jack Tucker, there you go. Yeah, I mean, he's excellent, but he's still young, and they will make mistakes. So that's the only questionable area. Maybe they need a bit more depth in central midfield. Not too sure, but in terms of up front, you've got very physical players with people like Brandon Hanlon who are a little bit quicker and offer a different option. This is a very interesting side, and like you say, I think lots of people are intrigued to see how the Gills do this year. I think Steve Evans is not universally popular, mostly because of the way he acts on the touchline, but as a manager in terms of recruitment, and players like playing for him, clearly. He could do well, and I'd like to see Gillingham do well this season. Yeah,
I've got a few friends who are Gills fans, so I'm exactly the same, as long as it's not at our expense. But they do really intrigue me. I think Steve Evans, I've had David Norris on the show previously, who played under him at Boreham Wood, like right at the beginning. He said, I didn't understand or didn't see how he would ever get to the level he's at and kind of achieve what he's achieved. But obviously he's done something since those early days of like non-league, and evidently he has. I mean, a few Gillingham friends that I've got, they kind of weren't enthused by his appointment at all, and now they kind of are totally swung around by him. And again, he's signed really well. I know obviously you said John Akinde. I do worry a little bit, but I don't know if that's more because they had someone like Tom Eaves who scored so many, but they actually recovered quite well last year, didn't they? And John Akinde is going to get his first full season because he only signed in the January. So yeah, that's another one but again, it's a club where if they finish 15th or they finished 5th off top, it's League One, isn't it? Sometimes you just don't know where it's going to land, but I'm really intrigued by Gillingham this year.
Yeah, I'd see them putting in as good a performance as last season, if not slightly better. So we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. Hull City, next club, obviously did a bit of a Sunderland, plummeting down the leagues. I actually thought they would, despite everything that's going on with them and the fact that the mood around the club's not great and McCann's not exactly universally liked at Hull, I kind of thought they would go up first or second. But then I watched them on Saturday against Sunderland, and I know they beat us on penalties, but they were awful. They really weren't that good at all. But is that just because it was basically glorified pre-season? Do you think they are going to be up there and thereabouts?
No, I'd be surprised. I think don't get me wrong, the recruitment's been all right. I think Alfie Jones, who was excellent for Gillingham last year, is a great signing, as is Greg Doherty, who frankly is probably the best bit of business they've done. Josh Emmanuel, I thought Josh Emmanuel probably gave Denver Hume as good a game as anyone will give him this season. I think Denver's a very quick player, but Josh sort of, I think, maybe had slightly the better of that battle on the weekend. Louis Cole, we know about him, obviously good player at Fleetwood last few seasons. So they've got the kind of, the recruitment's the right idea, players who've done it and been there and done it at this level, but not too old, not past it. But you say the mood is difficult at the club. Grant McCann, maybe not that popular. There's a lot of ifs and buts and question marks still about this side. I wouldn't be surprised if they did well, but equally I would be more sort of leaning towards a mid-table finish for them this season.
Yeah, I don't know, because I took them for second before Saturday, but then I don't know how much of that was based on me just looking at their side, and I see like a lot of good League One players, but then we had a whole guest on last week, and he was. It's very rare you'll get a guest on that says the team's going to get beaten. He was like, I think we'll get beat 2-1 from Sunderland, so on and so forth. And you could just tell the mood was not maybe where you wanted it to be. So, and like I said before, mood's massive at a club. It's so important. Look at Blackpool. It's gone from being like mid-table to we're talking about them potentially being in the playoffs. And on paper, Hull probably have the better team, with Honeyman there as well. Obviously good League One players, but I suppose that's going to be another intriguing one for all the wrong reasons, probably, just to see where they're going to end up. Because if they win the league or finish 10th, it's going to be surprising. But a club that did what they did last year, Ipswich, really interesting. I don't think it's gone quite as they planned, has it? They've got a bit of Sunderland about them. Do you think they can turn it around?
I'm more confident that they will, just because of the quality they have in the team. this saga with James Norwood, isn't there? Whether they keep him or not. I mean, I don't get why you would get rid of a player like James Norwood. I can't believe that he is problematic off the pitch, particularly. Whether it's wanting to cash in on him, don't really know, to be honest. But I mean, the signings they've made, David Cornell, I'd say he's a solid keeper. Stephen Ward is a veteran who will add to the squad in terms of experience. Ollie Hawkins, I think, is a better signing than a lot of people give credit for, because there's not many players that have given Rob Dickey a really tough time in League One in the last couple of seasons, but Ollie Hawkins did. My dad and I went down to Fratton Park to watch Oxford get beat 4-1 there, and he was absolutely bossing the attack. And that will allow players like Alan Judge, Flynn Downs, people to feed off him. And that's what Ipswich need, a focal point, someone who hold the ball up, someone who they can build their attacks around. If they've got Caden Jackson staying, then they've got players who will be able to feed off that. And I'm more confident about them perhaps this season than I was even last. I think the only question marks perhaps remain over Lambert, and the fact that he oversaw a real bad slide, didn't he?
Awful,
and in the midst of that, he got a 5-year new deal. So not the usual practice, and not one the fans are very, very happy about, I don't think.
Yeah, it was a bit bizarre because obviously I actually tipped them to win the league last year, which tells you everything that I know. But I kind of see Ipswich. I said they'd finish about 6th, but the reason I think they'll finish about 6th is essentially I think Lambert won't outstay the season. I think he'll be gone pretty early. I don't think. I mean, Ollie Hawkins, I 100% agree with you on that. I think it was a checker trade. He was an absolute monster. He absolutely bossed our defence, changed the game. I think he came on at half time. Obviously, he scored the winning penalty, but penalties are penalties. But
I don't think he'll score many goals, don't get me wrong, but I think he'll cause a lot of problems.
Yeah, it just causes havoc. There's just something about him, and he's obviously wily at this level as well. He knows what he's doing. He's a bit annoying for a centre half. He's not easily handled, and he's huge. He's absolutely enormous. So maybe
he reminds me like Matt Elliott slightly. He's nowhere near as good, but in terms of the fact he can play centre back, or they just he's actually a striker, isn't he? Let's be honest, but he can play centre back as well. Versatility can be useful.
Do you think Lambert will last the season? Do you think he can turn it around, or do you think it's going to be a case of he'll be gone early? Because I think he'll be gone early, if I'm honest.
I don't know. I think the owner giving him a 5-year deal suggests he won't. I think the owner seems quite pleased and set on keeping him. So I'd be surprised if he went. I wouldn't. I doubt his contract isn't without a sort of a get out clause, which probably if you don't do well, we can pay you 1 year's compensation and off you go. So it's. Yeah, may as well, like I say, those contracts may as well be 1 year rolling contracts with those clauses in, because the 5-year contract means nothing if it's got a get out clause in it. So I don't know. I'd be surprised though if the owner is backing him with a 5-year deal if he didn't show him some patience and let him build. But we'll see.
Yeah, and like you say as well, they still have a good team on paper, don't they?
Yeah, definitely.
They've brought in Stephen Ward as well from Stoke. I don't think that's a bad signing. I know he's not the right side of 30 at all, but I think having a bit of experience, a bit of nastiness, like someone like Stephen Ward and Ollie Hawkins could make a bit of difference, because they were a bit nice last year when we played against them. We played against them when they were flying, and we played against them when they weren't. Both times they played nice football, but like they weren't League One ready, if that made sense. They didn't look League One experienced, which obviously they aren't. They just looked a bit too nice. So having some experience, someone that can be a bit wily at this level, could make it could make a huge difference, couldn't it?
Yeah, obviously, I don't know what his fitness will be like. We've seen veterans come down before. Liam Ridgewell going to Southend last season. Don't think he played a game actually. So it does depend very much on the individual player. But I don't disagree with you. I think he's not a bad signing. No, not at all.
Next up's Lincoln, who I actually expected more of last year, but then obviously Cowley going made such a huge difference. But I think Appleton's a good manager. He's also the hugest man I've ever seen in my life. He's massive. They've recruited a lot. There's a lot of players that they brought in. I think the one that stands out for me, not just because of his Sunderland connections, is Bridcut. I think he's excellent at this level, to be honest. Even got at centre-half for Bolton sometimes last year. And I think they have a good team anyway, Lincoln. I think first full season for Appleton, I think they could do all right, at least top 10. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely agree with you. I'm a huge fan of Michael Appleton, obviously Oxford bias here, but he is a great coach. His recruitment was second to none at Oxford. He signed some of the best players that we've had at the club probably since the sort of John Aldridge era. The fact that a lot of them are playing at a higher level now, the likes of Kim Roof, John Lundstrom. There's probably loads more Baldock we had as well, of course.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of good players in that team that he brought through or signed and sold for profit, and that's what he does. He's great in the transfer market. And you look at the players that he's brought in. Lewis Monsma, technically gifted centre back. The club only saw him on video scouting and decided to take the plunge on him. I think that's a well taken risk. Liam Bridcott, like you say, is probably going to be very, very important player in this team. Adam Jackson's a good pickup from Hibs, obviously the ex-Barnsley player. Joe Walsh, experienced defender at this level. So, but the one I'm really intrigued about is Callum Morton. Loved him at Northampton last season.
Yeah.
What he gives you in energy and off the ball prowess. Whether or not he'll score, I don't know, but he will certainly give absolutely everything. Huge promise from him. Theo Archibald is another intriguing signing, but it's Appleton that I like, and I think he'll get them playing good football. They'll surprise a few people, and I think they'll finish higher up than some people are currently predicting. So, but time will tell.
Yeah, I think really well-run club as well. We went there last year, which was actually Jack Ross's last game, but good crowd that really get behind them. Actually, probably the best atmosphere I was at last year in League One. And I think the club itself seems to be really well set up. I think they've got some really good supporters groups. It's a nice day out. But also, they really get behind the team, and that can make such a huge difference at this level, can't it? Such a huge difference.
Yeah, they'll miss them during lockdown and during the period of not having no fans in. So
yeah,
whether or not that'll transpire on the pitch as a disadvantage, I don't know. But Lincoln's a great club that I've had a soft spot for them since the Keith Alexander years, really, and God rest his soul. And I think with the appointment of Appleton, I know that he's well liked. Bristol City were taking an interest in him this summer, so yes, I think I'm sold on them. I think they'll do very well.
Yeah, same, exactly. MK Dons, interesting one, because I didn't expect Russell Martin to do anything, if I'm honest with you. And I don't know if that's just because of maybe what I said before with Burton. I think I was just looking at inexperience, and I looked at a team in relegation trouble. But Russell Martin got them playing really good football. They've got a really good way of playing. It was a big turnaround under Martin. I think they could push mid-table this year.
I'm less enthused. I think the loss of Rhys Healey and Alex Gilby is massive.
Well, that is true, yeah.
I think for that reason, I'd say if they can stay up, they've done well. I think in our predictions, we had them finishing bottom four because, you've lost your best midfielder. You've lost Conor Grandles, who's probably your second best midfielder. Conor Grandles gone to Lincoln, of course, and Rhys Healey, your on-fire top scorer, gone to Toulouse. So, and also there's a little sign that the club probably financially having COVID having a bigger impact on them, because the owner's business is all stadium events, which have all been cancelled, and that's very, very difficult to sort of cope with. If you have an owner whose core businesses are struggling, then he's not going to be able to invest as much in the football, and that's why I think Gilby and Healey were allowed to go. So I see a bit more struggle this season, but Russell Martin does, you're right, getting them playing good football. It's just whether they've got the strength in depth now and the goals in this side to stay up and do enough to compete.
And they haven't spent any money yet. I think they got about 450,000 from Toulouse, didn't they, for Rhys Healey, which is good money at this level, really.
It's not bad. I think it's necessity, really. From what I'm hearing, it's something they needed. And you can't. If the club struggle on the pitch this season but survive financially, I have no problems with that at all. And I think fans should always look at it with in the context of the era that their team is playing in. Let's be honest. A lot of teams could struggle. The can's been kicked down the road with the advance in payments from the EFL and Sky. But that's only an advance. It's not a free loan. So there will be some clubs who suddenly hit financial troubles later on, especially if COVID comes back in any serious way. So, I think the main thing for clubs that feel they might struggle financially is to be prudent here and put the club first and look at the bigger picture rather than worry too much about one season and a potential bit of struggle in the short term.
Yeah, with MK Dons as well. Do you think that Carlton Morris could make the step up and change? Because he looked quite good in like what the short amount of time we got to see him last year. But I think I don't know if he'll be the exact replacement for Healy, but I think he could do quite well. And I think if he got goals, I think that's where I was more thinking they could push mid-table. I think that's someone who could score enough to get
really
them
goal scorer, Carlton Morris. If you look at his time at Shrewsbury when they reached the playoff final, he works extremely hard. He's one of these guys who runs the line well, gets in the channels, works hard. And he was more of a foil for Stephen Payne during that season with Shrewsbury. And again, last season, when he came in, he did look quite good, and I think he will do well. But he's not the natural finisher, or has not been to this point in his career that Reece Healy was. So I don't necessarily see him scoring a lot of goals, but that could change. He's still young, and it's a good signing. It is a good signing.
What's your thoughts on the signing of Richard Keogh?
It's a risk. I mean, we don't know his fitness levels. I mean, I think the way Derby treated him was a disgrace, frankly, but I won't go into that in this podcast. It's terrible, isn't it? But I mean, he's not young, and he's coming back from a serious injury. So I think that cap your expectations a little bit on this one and see how he does. Obviously he knows Russell quite well, so that's why he's been brought in, and that experience will, can't be sniffed at. It's just how many minutes you get out of him across a very condensed campaign. I have to wait and see. Yeah.
Next up's Northampton. I'll be honest, I'm worried about Northampton. They've lost, I think, 13 players have left in total. There's nothing there that I see that I think could keep them up, but I could be wrong. I didn't watch them as much as maybe you did last year. But what's your thoughts on Northampton? Do you think they'll struggle?
Yeah, absolutely think they'll struggle. And, this is where they do a Wickham and shock us all, because they play a very very direct style, and Keith Curle will do that. But you're right, they lost Verdane Oliver, obviously a very key player, Callum Morton, a very key player in the playoffs, and Charlie Good, probably their best player. So difficult players to replace. Cian Bolger will come in and do an excellent job at the back. Fraser Horsfall, Macclesfield fans are a bit shocked that he's made the transition to League One. I thought he was a good League Two defender. He's physical enough. Technically, he's probably not to the level you'd expect for League One, but that could change. Joseph Mills coming from Forest Green after a really good season, and then some other signings that could be hit and miss really. And I think Keith Curle will be looking at imposing his style on League One defences and hoping that they can win enough points that way. But like you, I do have concerns because they've lost some very important players in the same summer, and that's always difficult to replace.
Yeah, no, I think it's just the sheer volume of players that they've lost and the important ones that they've lost as well. I just think they would have been up against it anyway with them. I think looking at them now, without them, I've kind of tipped them to finish the bottom of the pile. But they're going to do a Wickham now that I've said that, aren't they?
Well, no, exactly. You can't. The great thing about this level of football is that you really don't know what to expect. But I like I say, on paper, you'd expect them to struggle, but you never know.
Yeah. Next club, obviously, Oxford, a club you know well. I think they'll do really well. I know Rob Dickey's gone, but I think he'll be fine. I think he'll be there or thereabouts again, if not in the top two. How are you feeling, though, from an Oxford perspective?
Yeah, very positive. Very, very positive. I think Rob Dickey going, I know Robbie well, and I knew he was leaving, but QPR was not the destination that I'd heard. But there you go. I think he'll go there and play with Mark Warburton in a footballing side and do really, really well. But we do have Rob Atkinson, who comes in, I think, as the most obvious replacement and a player that looks like he could slot in seamlessly. Time will tell on that. But we've kept the bulk of our squad. I think that's important. We've kept the bulk of our squad. We signed Marcus McGuane in from Notts Forest, who's an excellent midfielder. Liam Kelly's come back on loan from Feyenoord. Sean Clare is a big upgrade at right back, and I think he is a very talented player. Unknown Joel Cooper, if he does anything like Gavin White did, signing from the League of Ireland, then we'll be quids in and love it. And Matty Taylor, probably the most important signing. Seeing him come back and hopefully score lots of goals to get us up challenging in the playoffs again.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at the players that have left and that have gone. I don't think. I mean, Jimmy Mackey's retired now, hasn't he? Jimmy Mackey had a good season last season, and he definitely has his benefits. But I think you've got more than enough to cover that, especially with Taylor. Taylor's the main man, isn't he?
Yeah, Taylor's our main man, definitely for goals. I mean, I think without him, I'd be a bit worried. But he's an Oxford fan, so there was always a good chance that he'd come back and end his career with us, and I expect him to do really well next season.
Yeah. Next club is a club that I personally think will win the league this year, although they do always seem to bottle it for some reason. Peterborough. The simple thing about them is they've signed well again. They've lost a big player, but they've replaced him. They've got a good side there anyway, and a lot of people speak about Marcus Maddison, and obviously he's gone and he went in January to Hull, but they played better without Maddison, really, I think, statistically. For me, I think Peterborough is going to win the league. Am I right with that? Am I wrong?
Well, obviously we won't know until the season ends. But in terms of your theory and your thinking, I agree with you 100%. I mean, this is a side that should be challenging for automatic promotion and indeed the title at this level. They've got an excellent squad of players, a stable squad of players. They've improved, I think, overall. Yes, they've lost Ivan Toney, but they've signed Johnson Clark-Harris. So, if you want a replacement for him at this level, you can't get much better than that. Yeah. Brian Broom has come in from Cheltenham, who's a superb player for Cheltenham in the last couple of seasons. Reece Brown comes back on loan from Huddersfield. Strength, depth, attacking options. I think Siriki Dembele is a brilliant player. You've got Mo Issa, who, again, he's a natural finisher. Yeah, it's just so much to like about this team. That if they didn't make a challenge for the automatics, I think they may have. I think their chairman was quite right that they had an excellent chance of automatic promotion last year. Then it would be, I think, a failed season. I mean, you wouldn't expect to see this side if we have the full year, full set of fixtures. If they finish outside the top six, it's a big failed season for me.
Yeah, huge. I think even, like you said before, I think they're probably the team that is to feel the most aggrieved about what happened, because I think they would have been there or thereabouts. I think they could have even pushed for automatics because they're just.
I think they'd have got it. I think if you look at their schedule, if you look at their run-in, they had a very favourable run-in, and obviously it's too simplistic to say, they would have beaten the teams in the lower half of the table. But you can only surmise that is the more likely outcome, and so you can see why they were so upset about not being allowed to finish the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of people pinpointed sort of my opinion on that and the way that it ended not being right. Being a Sunderland fan, it very much wasn't. I think it was Peterborough that were the harshest done by, because they're running in comparison to, say, like Rotherham, because Rotherham's running was really difficult. I wouldn't have been surprised if it was Peterborough rather than Rotherham if the world was normal and COVID didn't exist. But I think they'll do it this year. I think they've got the best squad in the division on paper. But again, football's not won on paper. But if I was to make a prediction, I think they'll win the league, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why the EFL didn't do the sensible thing and have the playoffs structured like the National League ones and allow Sunderland and Peterborough to compete, given the fact that they were both within 3 points of the automatic places when the season ended. That would have been logical and the most fair, but, it's the EFL, isn't it? So,
logic doesn't always exist, yeah. With the next team, Plymouth, great manager. They've got a good keeper. They've lost, obviously, a few important players, but I think they'll be all right, Plymouth. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Agree with you. Ryan Lowe is the reason I think they'll be all right. I think they play an attacking style of football that is, it's successful. If you play good football, if you play technically good football in League Two, you tend to do well in League One. It's a trend that we're seeing more and more often. And I think actually we'll see it be the way of clubs going forward. I think the sort of kick and rush style that we got, maybe a decade ago, which was sort of the way you got out of the fourth tier, that's disappearing. Teams like Crewe, Swindon and Plymouth are playing lovely football, and they're reaping the benefits of that. And it's proving that if you do put together a technically gifted group of players, even at the lowest level of this the sort of the professional football pyramid, you can then get promoted and be almost straight away ready for the division above. And we saw it with Luton, and I think we'll see it with Plymouth. I don't expect them to be a team that will make a playoff push necessarily, but they should be one of those sides that have no fears of relegation. They've got a good squad. George Cooper's come back. They've still got likes of Danny Mayer. I'd like to see them strengthen at the back because I think their defence is slightly vulnerable at a high level, and at times they looked a little bit weak in League Two last season, but everywhere else they look pretty strong.
Yeah. Another team that obviously I think will do really well and have probably underachieved for a while is Portsmouth, but really good team. Obviously, they've lost Burgess. Watmore's back. Marquis, I think, is still one of the better defenders, the strikers in the league. Sorry, Ronan Curtis is superb. I love to hate him, but he's superb. My biggest worry for Portsmouth is, have they gone a little bit stale under Kenny Jackett?
Well, that's the argument the fans are putting forward, isn't it? I think the Portsmouth fans are saying, and I don't agree with them one bit, but then I'm not a Portsmouth fan, so do I have the right to say that? It's just an opinion, really. But I think he has got the right mentality, the right experience, and the know-how to get them promoted. And I think if you look at their form, apart from the slow start they made, they should have been a team challenging for the automatics. And when Oxford played them in the playoffs, it went to penalties. They weren't by no means a bad team, and would probably have felt that they should have had a lead going into the second leg in that game. So I think if you stick with him, he will get the results. And I don't think Christian Burgess is actually that big a loss. I mean, yes, he's a big defender and solid, but he was always a bit erratic at times. And they've got Sean Raggett back, and I think Watmore, if he can stay fit, they've got a better defender. Probably the best defender in the club is Watmore if he can keep himself fit. So I don't have many concerns. And just play Marquis up front. That's the only thing I'd say to Kenny Jackett. Don't play him deep. Don't play him as an attacking midfield. Play him up front, and he will score goals at this level. He's an out-and-out striker. And I think there are reasons for Pompey fans to be frustrated, but in the end, Kenny Jackett always seems to deliver, and so I'd have faith in him to do well this season. But again, it's all very up in the air. I think whoever copes best with a condensed schedule and keeps injury free, they'll be the teams that in the end get into the promotion places, and that will be very important.
Yeah. Next club is a club that I'm really worried for a couple of reasons, really. I think first and foremost with Rochdale, they were the worst side that I've seen at the Stadium Light last year. They were awful. From minute 1 to minute 19, it was just across the whole field. But then they've had Henderson for a few years, who seem to have kept their head above water. And I know they have this way of playing, they have this style that they want to implement. It didn't necessarily seem to work past the first month of last season. Now they don't have a striker, in my opinion, that can score as many goals as Henderson. I think they're going to go down. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, 100% agree. And although, the Rochdale fans will be hoping that they can do enough to keep their head above water, I think for the club, they made the sensible decision of, we won't offer anyone a new contract. We'll make sure that we're financially secure and stable. And if it means struggling again in the short term, it's better to do that than try and do too much. I mean, they have been trying to sign Stephen Humphreys from Southend, so they might have got into a position now where they're okay and they think they can improve the squad. And so I wouldn't be surprised to see they being the team that does a little bit more business before the October window shuts. And in that case, they might be able to bring in players that can help them. But they, on paper, have a fairly weak side. And for the size of club, you'd all expect them to struggle anyway. Alex Newby is actually a good signing from Chorley. A lot of clubs were looking at him. So that's not a bad bit of business. But you're right, Ian Henderson's goals, with those gone, that's a season of struggle ahead, I think, for Rochdale is universally something that most pundits agree about at this level.
Yeah, I think so. And again, you're a good little club, been there a couple of times. I really hope that they do prove me wrong. But just losing Henderson when they were barely keeping their head above water with Henderson makes me a little bit worried. And also a strange decision for them to get rid of Henderson, because they just didn't offer him a contract, did they?
No, I think, again, like I say, I think they were putting the club ahead of sort of the heart there, and thought, as much as we'd like to keep him, let's just, he's probably one of their best earners. So in the end, they made the decision to be financially prudent rather than take any risks. And that's probably the right move.
Yeah, in this day and age, yeah, absolutely, you might be right. Shrewsbury next up. Really good side, really strong squad, but I don't think Sam Ricketts is getting the best out of it. He's had more than enough time, it seems, now as well. I think he's been there 18 months approximately. They could surprise people because they have got a strong squad. I think Aaron Pierre's great, but what's your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I heard a good interview with him done by the Southcast lads actually in pre-season. I'd recommend
that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a great interview. And so he's committed to changing the style this season. And in fact, if you look at their cup result against Middlesbrough, they did play like a 4-3-3 with a narrow three up front.
Yeah.
Reckle Pike scored a goal. Scott High looked pretty good in that midfield area. Obviously, he's coming from Huddersfield. And Marlon Fossey looks like he could be a really sort of good option to give Don Love a bit of competition at right back. So I like what they've done. And I think my big reservations, like you, is like Ricketts' style of football was so tedious last season. They didn't score many goals and they created, apart from the bottom three, I think, the least chances. So there was a lot of question marks over that. But I think he thinks they've got enough base now to build on and change the style to go more attacking. So this could be quite an exciting season. The 3 goals they scored a bit against Middlesbrough, credit to them for that. And hopefully, if they do adopt that style of football, sort of most people's predictions, I think we had them 18th or something. I think that might be a bit conservative, and they could do a lot better. I'd like to see them sign, one more out-and-out striker, to be honest, because that's probably the area they're weakest. But everywhere else, I mean, they've still got Sean Whalley, who, if you watch them in this sort of playoff season at 17-18, he was great. So they've got some really good players. It's just, do you trust Ricketts to deliver his promise of attacking football? Yeah, we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, I think it's got such promise as well, Shrewsbury. Like, when you look through the team, it's a solid side at this level. It's really good. I just feel like they've underachieved for so long. So yeah, maybe it'll be better for maybe the Southcast boys to answer this. But I'm from a distance on the fence with Ricketts, because I think we should be doing better. But talking about clubs that should be doing better, next on the list is Sunderland. Strong squad, but my opinion, we're penning hopes on 3 strikers that so far in their Sunderland careers haven't guaranteed goals. We've signed Bailey Wright, but obviously he was there last year. Aidan O'Brien's a good signing, but I still think we need more. But I'm very biased. You always want more as a Sunderland fan, and you always want better for your own club. So I'll maybe ask you what your thoughts are on Sunderland from a completely neutral perspective.
Yeah, I think everyone thinks that they should be doing better given the resources and the playing squad available to them. I don't think the performance against Hull was bad, despite the result. I think he should have won the game, actually.
Yeah, true.
And I do think Will Grigg, he had scored a couple of goals, both offside, maybe slightly debatably as well against Hull. So if he can improve, and I think he might do this season, then you've always got a chance. But it's a case of, do you trust I think it's the off-the-field distractions that have been as damaging as anything really at Sunderland. There's certainly not a great mood around the club with Stuart Donald sort of openly trying to sell it and all this. I won't go into all in here, but there's been a lot of shenanigans, hasn't there? And there's been a lot of discontent amongst the supporters. So,
huge.
But as a club like Sunderland should be in League One. I mean, that's no disrespect to the division, but this is a club with massive potential, massive fan base. That's just been really badly mismanaged for a number of seasons, and it just is a warning actually to a number of other big clubs that have owners that aren't prudent in their transfer business. And I think recruitment is so important. If you get mercenaries turning up who don't care about the club they're joining, we saw it with Stoke. It's a dangerous thing. So, but I would expect a good season. If you don't finish in the playoffs, you should be disappointed. I'd hope he plays a bit more of an attacking style, and I think Bailey Wright's going to be a very important player for you. Keep him fit, and you've got an excellent defender there, and you should finish. And give Jack Diamond a chance as well. I mean, he's an excellent player. Can play left wing back. Give Denver Hume a bit of run for his money. So a bit of depth there. Yeah,
there's a few young lads coming through in Diamond, and also Dan Neil as well. So good in pre-season. He was on the bench on Saturday, and they reckon he's going to be playing in the EFL Trophy game against Aston Villa under 21. So it'll be interesting to see if some of the young lads can actually be the missing piece to the puzzle. But I think for me, it's if Will Grigg turns up, and Will Grigg is the Will Grigg we thought we'd signed, it's going to be a very different season. But if not, I think that's where we struggled the past few years, isn't it? We just haven't had someone since Madja left that can bang in 20 goals a season.
Yeah, play to his strengths and he'll deliver. And I think that's something that you've not been able to do thus far. But let's hope it's this year. Eh?
Yeah, fingers crossed, mate. Yeah, absolutely. Swindon's next up. They've got a good team. I think obviously Doherty's good, Dion Conroy's really good, but they've lost a lot as well. Obviously Doyle, Yates, they've lost a lot of I think they scored 44 goals between them, Yates, Doyle and Anderson last year. So I think they'll stay up, but barely. Do you agree with that, or do you think they're going to be in for a tough campaign?
I don't think they'll struggle. I don't think they'll struggle because they've got a manager in Richie Wellens who plays great style of football, and they've signed Johnny Smith, who's far too good for League Two, to be honest, on loan from Bristol City. He was at Oldham last year. Brett Pittman's come in, who will maybe be able to take the sort of Owen Doyle mantle, and they are technically a pretty good team. So I wouldn't expect them to struggle too much. I think there's a big question mark over losing as many key players as they have is going to be detrimental to them for the coming season. But if you know Richie Wellens and you like the football he plays, then a season of progress in mid-table would be good.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I do worry because the players that they've lost, but again, it's this league, isn't it? They could finish top or finish bottom. Neither of it would surprise you, not to beat you in a way, I think. But I do worry a little bit because of the players that they've lost. The team I really, really worry for is Wigan. It feels very Bolton-esque, doesn't it? They're going to at least want to consolidate, but there's rumours going around that they're going to have to play a lot of young boys come start the season. Obviously, they've lost a really, really good manager.
They've signed Viv Solomon, Otterbourne, and Dan Gardner, so there's some positive signs there.
There's some.
I just think, like you, it's all about. I mean, they need to avoid that 15-point additional penalty because, of course, that's if you don't pay your football creditors or commit to paying them at least 25% in the pound before the start of the season, then you'll be subject to a 15-point penalty. So that's the danger for this season before it's even started. But I think Wigan fans will just want this to be all over and that they'll have a team to support regardless of how well they do.
Yeah, it's getting to that point, isn't it? The same with Bolton last year. I think Bolton, the fans even seen their team getting beat 5-1, 6-0. They were just, at least there was fans there that could watch their team and have a club. I think that's what it was all about. And obviously Bolton did go down, but I think they were in a far more positive frame of mind going into this season than they were last season. And I think Wigan probably will just hope they're going to be similar to what Bolton were this year, next year. But I wish them all luck. I think it's awful what's happened to them. I don't think it's deserved. I think
that's the fact. Yeah, it's like I said at the beginning of the podcast. We all need as fans to unite against sort of seeing the change we need because this could be one bad owner. It could be anyone's club. So let's hope that we can get out of the trouble they're in.
Absolutely. And last but not least, it's one of my favourite clubs for many reasons. Good friends with Ivor Heller, who was part of the start of AFC Wimbledon, so I always want to see them do well. But they've lost a lot of players. New stadium, obviously fans aren't going to be able to get in there. I think there'll be a bit of optimism, I think, with obviously the new era, so to speak, before possibly falling away just due to the quality in the squads, maybe not as high as some of the clubs. But they should be all right, AFC Wimbledon, but not everyone agrees with me on that. What do you think?
So Wimbledon, I think, like you say, it's an interesting team because they're moving back to Plough Lane. So that's this huge thing. And it's such a shame that they're not doing it with fans there. I do think they'll struggle. I think if they can stay up this season, it'll be a very good season for them, to be honest. Alex Woodyer and Ollie Palmer coming in. I mean, if you're basing your attack on Ollie Palmer, I'm not convinced he's going to be able to score the goals you need to stay up. But they do have a very good dressing room. They have a good coach in Glyn Hodges. So there's enough there to suggest that they can compete. It's just whether or not, they can be the right side of the relegation line like they tend to be each season. I'm going to back them to stay up. I think they will do it. It's great to see them move back to Merton, back to their spiritual home. And that will be the story of the season. And I just hope on the pitch that they can match it and produce positive results, to be honest.
Yeah, same. James, thanks very much for joining us and previewing the season. Obviously, someone with a vast amount of knowledge on this division, much more than I have. So thanks for your input, and let's look forward to getting fans back in the stadium as soon as possible and safely, hopefully.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you very much for having me on.
No problem, mate. Thank you.